And now we are live, finally. Sorry because we are always late, but technical problems always appear at the last minute. So, I'm Gabriel. I work at HP, and now we are starting this hangout to discuss a little bit about the English language and its usage on our IT community, on our testing community. So let's introduce ourselves. Please, Anna, start.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Ana Carolina and I work at Ministério Público do Distrito Federal e Territórios. In fact, now I'm not working because I'm solving some health issues. So this time I'm at home. Yeah, but I was a tester there, and now when I come back, I don't know what I will do. Yeah,
You
but
start doing hangouts.
yes, this is my first hangout.
Yeah, so we have Sauner, our old school tester here. Say hello. Oh, mute, mute, mute. You're on mute, mute. Yeah, technical problems again.
Yeah, he's on mute.
No, no, you're moving your lips and we are not listening. Sorry. Again, we know. Let's go with Felipe. Who are you, Felipe?
Hey, hello. I'm Felipe Silva. I work at Act Minds. I've been working with international projects, most of them from the United States for a couple years. Almost all my almost all my career was working on international projects. So that's me. Good hangout to everybody.
Nice. And our last time addition, Roberto, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Roberto Passani. I'm working for as test analyst on multinational companies for almost 10 years now. I live in Rio de Janeiro, but I also had the opportunity to work on São Paulo, Recife, Salvador, and for almost 3 years now in here. And I think this is a great opportunity to exchange our knowledge and the culture about testing.
Nice. So let me see if Sauner is speaking or not.
He's back now? No,
No,
he's not.
no, no. Try to get out and get in again. Get out of the car, getting on the car, and etc. It seems to work on every software. Yeah, you will do that. So, guys, folks, let's start on how did we learn that language? How we live in a country where English language is supposedly taught at school, but it doesn't always helps and doesn't always teach people the way it should. So, how did we learn it? How and why did we learn it English?
Can you hear me now, guys?
Nah, yay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Finally, sorry.
great
Uh,
now.
And you
um,
can
Introduce yourself.
answer.
yeah, there are some technical issues on my side, but let me introduce myself. My name is Eduardo Sauner. I work at Ecor. So I've been working with international projects for a long time. I believe that more than 10 years working with international projects, and I'm working on the testing area for 15 years right now. So as Gabriel said in the beginning of this meeting, I'm a kind of old school guy, but not so old, right?
Mm.
You have hair.
Yeah, I'm not that. I
Your
do
hair
not
is
want
not
to
too
be
white.
tied to some kind of stereotypics or something like that. I prefer to say that I am an experienced guy, and and that's it.
So, Sander, let's start with you then. How and why did you learn English?
How and why? Well, it's a long story, but I mean, I believe that first of all,
140 characters.
sorry?
A tweet long, please.
Yeah, okay.
That's
So I basically, when I started learning English, I started by myself, and I started because I was curious about understanding other languages. So English by that time would be the biggest language in the world for professional stuff. So I decided to try learning English by myself. Later, some years later, I started doing some courses. But to be honest, most part of those modules I skip it because I was a little bit uh, better than what they were telling me by the time. So yeah, okay, but that's
sorry.
true.
I had to do that.
That's true. But basically, I started first of all, I started learning because of the curiosity and to improve and especially to expand the culture and of understanding other people or trying to be traveling abroad or something like that. And this was my main focus in the beginning. But of course, trying to have a kind of target for the professional market, but I basically started learning English before I started working professionally with English. Uh, my professional career didn't start with English. I was not speaking in the beginning, and I switched it to international companies because of my English and not the opposite. So basically, that's the short story.
Nice. And Roberto, what about you?
Yeah, I started just studying by myself. I had the opportunity to use a lot of the old apps, the chat, when you could interact with international or abroad people. Uh, I used to connect on the US server, so I start to practice and always trying to write as fast as I could, so I could improve my typing and also my English learning. I'm almost all self-study. I never did any special English courses, but I had just the grammar that I could learn on the school level. But the focus for me to learn was the professional opportunities that I always wanted to work with IT, so I always knew that I would have better opportunities with the best English I could improve, and also because I want to chat with people all around the world.
Nice. It's really nice to be understood by other folks. So it's kind of common ground for everyone. What about you, Anna? How
Uh,
did you learn it?
well, it's a long story also, so I'll have to sum it up. Well, I was born with a rare disease. Yeah, that there is no cure for it. And in Portuguese, it is called epidermólise bulhosa, or we call it EB because the name is too strange. Yeah, to simplify, we use the acronym. Yeah, and the first information that my mom got about it was in English. So she observed that learning English was something really important. So when I was 5, she she made me start learning English at an English course for kids. Yeah, and I studied English at English courses up to 15 when I finished my course, and when I was 16, I started teaching. Yeah, and I still teach because I want to keep up my English. Of course, it's not perfect because I'm not a native speaker. Yeah, but I try to do the best I can.
You talk
Yeah.
as an English teacher, Anna.
Yeah, it's because I'm a teacher. There's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. Nowadays I have some private students. Yeah. And summarizing, that's it. So all my life, for example, when I was 12, I was already reading medical articles. Yeah, and all my college studies, I was English was easy for me during all college and all my working life. Yeah, so it's a different reality from you guys.
Nice, nice. It's weird to see someone that has learned English like their whole life. I mean, I started to get interested in English when I was a teenager because I have games to play and those games were not translated to Portuguese, so I had to understand it in order to beat it. So English it will be, and that's why it kind of helped me entering on IT by learning English. I don't know about you, Anna, that also knows English like forever. Oh, we have Carla. Why Carla is here? Oh my. Let me try to
No, don't
remove her.
worry, guys, because you were all great. I'm understanding you all. Yeah, and grammar mistakes we all do. So even in Portuguese, we don't speak perfect Portuguese. So don't worry because you're very good, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
Nice.
I used to tell people when we are talking about that all those mistakes that people used to do. I usually tell them that okay, if you are worried about your English for if you are speaking with an English native, can you imagine how hard for a native American, for example, try to speak in Portuguese when they are trying to learn Portuguese? Because I mean, it's harder, much harder than
Yeah.
English, I believe, for them. And I had this inputs not from an American, but from a Chinese teacher when I was studying Chinese some time ago, and she was living in Brazil for 17 or 18 years, and she told me that if you learn the basics from Chinese grammar, for example, when you start living in China for 6 months, in 6 months you are fluent in Chinese. But the opposite is not true. I'm here for 15 years, for 15, 17 years, and I'm still not speaking Portuguese correctly. So they are considering Portuguese even harder than Mandarin or than Chinese to speak. So it was a kind of surprise for me, but that's the reality. Portuguese is one of the most hard language to learn, and English is not that one. I think uh, we all can speak English very well. We can understand each other, and this is great. I mean, and I'm still to be honest, sometimes I'm still surprised that it is not so common as I would like to see in the streets, for example. I would, by now, having all the internet stuff, all people having contact with the international activities or stuff like that, and we still have only a few people speaking in English in Brazil. Okay, for us in our world here on the IT area and stuff like that, we have many people talking English all the time. But if you uh, have a comparison with the other areas, you are going to see that this is not so common as it is in IT, for example. So
And
this impresses me sometimes because I would expect right now in 2015 that people would be more engaged on learning a different language like English, for example, and it's not a reality, unfortunately.
let me pull Felipe to the talk. Felipe, why do you think it's still weird or it's still hard to see someone talking in English in public or learning English? Why is it so bad sometimes? You start in a phone call and you start in English, and people around you just look at you and what are you doing? And why do you speak in another language? Well, because the guy on the other side is speaking another language. So anyway, why do you think it's so hard for in such year as 2015 to have people learning English?
Okay, so I guess that it's a kind of trauma because in this school it's like in math when people are starting getting afraid of math and physics and alchemistry and those kind of things. And also the case is that for about 12 years of your life, when you are in school, the only thing you try to learn is the to be verb, and that's that's boring. I had to do a small course of just about 2 years to learn English, and then the rest I learned in working. And I was 12 years in school, and I didn't learn the to be verb. I just heard about that stuff and the books on the table. the the only phrase that's known by Brazilian. So I guess that's the problem is that we don't see uh, maybe
We
different
don't see many
motivations.
people. Ah,
We
okay.
don't see motivations to learn English in school.
And how did you learn English at the first place?
My story is similar to yours. It's about games. When I was 14 years old, I actually until today I still like to play games, and I played a lot of games, strategical and thinking games, where I had to solve some questions and find stuff, and RPG games and that kind of stuff. Then I asked my mom to pay an English course for me, and that was the reason. But in the course, I just learned about the grammar and writing and reading. The speaking itself, I improved it working in my when I started in a project where there were a lot of Indians. Most of them were Indians and some North Americans. Then I had to work, and it was already a agile project. It wasn't a Scrum. It was more Lean based and another kind of agile. And I had to be in meetings all day. So 5 years listening people speaking English, you end up learning. That's how I learned the speaking.
It's nice to see another nerd in the Hangout. I'm not the only one.
That's common in IT, right?
So, yeah, it's supposed to be right. We should have all play games, but no. Okay, I will stop babbling. And we all kind of learn English based on curiosity or on actually life needs, like Anna. That is a real teacher, and it's trying to too hard to not fix our English problems. And how exactly does the other people? Felipe talked about motivation, and motivation is something that is not so common to see on other folks. So, what do you guys think that would motivate most people to learn English? Wouldn't be a better salary a good motivating reason, or maybe to learn another culture, or like Roberto just said, to talk with different people to learn about different people's needs and lives, etc. What should or what could motivate people to learn English at first place? And maybe at IT, and then we do the link for IT there. Roberto?
I think as best English you talk, better jobs and challenges you get. And you only can get international projects if you speak a good English. I used to work with Indians and Russians and British people, Irish, Scottish, American. So you only get the accent if you have a good English, if you have a nice knowledge. Uh, the vocabulary is much different from each country. They have their own culture. It's like Portuguese spoken in Brazil and in Portugal, and you only get the best projects. You only have the option to choose if you have the best English.
I think that the first start or what the first insight that a person has to start learning English probably is motivated by better salaries or some stuff related to the professional career. Uh, because look, I think this is this is part of one of the topics that we have today. But if you have, for example, you are working like us. I'm working. Let's suppose I'm start working as a tester today. If I start working in a company where I do not have the opportunity for talking English, for example, I suppose that my salary will be X. But if I have a fluent English or at least an advanced English and I'm able to talk in English with many different people and understanding them and they are able to understand myself as well, this would make me a kind of way to leverage my career and talking about having better opportunities in the future. I would say that today, if you compare a tester, let's suppose a mid-level tester, which speaks English fluently, and another one who doesn't speak English at all, probably the first guy would have a better salary than the second one because the market and the companies pay more for this kind of person, this kind of professional, especially because learning a new language is not only about communicating to the customer outside or on the other side of the world.
Oh, you got through frozen, and I think you will
It
be
freezes.
figured out. So, Anna, what do you think? What would motivate people to learn English?
Okay. Well, in my case, I work for the government. Yeah. So, talking about better salary, knowing English or not knowing English doesn't change my salary. Yeah, that's a difference from you guys. But that's bad. But it makes my life much easier because we all know that knowledge comes first in English. Yeah. And many of the knowledge that we have is not translated. So I have this facility that other co-workers don't have. And sometimes my co-workers ask me for help. Yeah, when they don't understand something, they ask me to see if what they understood is correct. Yeah, but it doesn't change my salary at all. Yeah, but what is important for me is because it allows me to do some work at home. Yeah, so I work for some companies online in testing and usability and localization. I don't know if everybody knows what is localization because the translation in Portuguese is really bad for this word. Yeah. So I have these opportunities because I know English. Yeah. So I can make more money having other jobs at home because of English language. Yeah.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
I agree with a lot of those points. And I will not say that we get directly a salary increase, but there are specific positions for English speakers. And in some companies where I work and where I work, uh, people could have 10 years of experience, and if they don't speak English, they wouldn't be able to join us in our team. But if that people was someone outside of the IT area, someone who knows just a little bit of computer but has a good English, they would hire the people and then teach them how to work because it's easier to teach someone how to test than teaching how to speak in English. And for my career, for example, it was I could notice that that improvement when I joined the international projects. I never left them, and then I was able to be hired in some positions on international projects, and then I feel comfortable and I feel that some kind of stability that I can find jobs easily, and if I am in a job, they will be the possible to keep him in the company because they know how hard it is to find someone who has both experience plus the English speaking. And what do you guys think about that? Do you see any difference in your career, Sauner?
I think there's no direct relations that with that English and be a great tester, but you only be able to have a good career as testing if you have a good English. You cannot be on international companies or national companies. You only have the best opportunity to grow as a specialist or as a test manager, test leader, test coordinator of project. If you have a good English to maybe in future uh, negotiate with the clients and have the best prospectus of the project. Sorry, I know that Felipe sent the chat to Sona, but I was wanting to talk and they got into. But uh, I was saying that these indirect relations, like if the person has a good ability to negotiate and his personal issues and the personal qualities of his personality as the English will create the best professional he can be. It's not a straight direction. He will be a great tester if he knows the good English, but indirectly he will be the best tester with the good English and will have a better career.
Just starting a big parenthesis, if someone wants to talk with another guy that is talking, please do it. It's a hangout. I'm not here to centralize stuff. I'm just here to pass the ball and pass the talk to each one. And another parenthesis that we don't have any questions. Please, folks who are online, I know you're here and you can ask questions even in Portuguese because we know how to read Portuguese. We are just trying not to. But okay, let's close the parenthesis and go please somewhere.
So not sure what was the last part that you were able to listen from my side because I lost the connection here for a while. But I
I
but I agree in some terms what the guys were telling, especially what Roberto was telling us, that being a good tester is not directly related to how good is your English. But if you have a good English, you may have more opportunities as a tester, I believe. Especially
Agreed.
especially for example like he said, when you are in a position or for a, let's suppose you are a test lead, for example, and you have to negotiate with the customer, like I do, for example, when I'm United States, I have to talk to my customer, and usually you have to talk to the VPs, you have to talk to the project managers, to the scrum master. Sometimes with the CIO, you met the CIO, you meet the CIO on the corridor and say, hey, how are you, and let's have some coffee or something like that, and you have to talk to all kinds of people there. So you have to be not only having a good English is enough, but of course you have to be a easygoing person and being able to talk with American people or whatever is the language you are, or whatever is the country you are, but the English country you are. But it is important to not only speaking a good English, but having communication skills, because communication makes everything easier. If you have a good communication, you have a good way to drive the situations or address the questions you have. It makes your life easier. Usually when I'm in the United States talking to people there, we have a team here and a team there. Uh, of course, for Brazilians, it's a little bit easier because this is something that we have in advantage to the other countries, especially India, for example. I was in one of the trips I was in there. I was having dinner with one of our partners, and he was telling me something very interesting. He said that, and he was a VP, right? He was not any kind of person. He was a VP, a technology VP, and he was telling me that I used to work with many different kinds of people. I used to hire Indians. I used to hire Brazilians, and even if Brazilians are 5 times expensive than an Indian guy is, I still prefer having business with Brazilians because of their approach, their proactivity, and the cultural fit they have to the American people. It's much easier for the Americans to deal with Brazilians because our cultures have a kind of similarity that they do not find when they are dealing with the Indians, for example. And this is nothing against the Indian people or something like that. It's basically because we are closer to them, to the Americans, in this kind of cultural stuff. And of course, we have a very good time zone comparing to India when we are having business with the Americans, at least for the New York zone, for example, where right now we are just 1 hour ahead them. Uh, on the other hand, India, for example, is 10 hours ahead, I believe. So it's harder for them. But the basic stuff is that they are right now, even if they are changing the approach, instead of paying for a cheaper service, they are paying for something which is more expensive, but where they are believing that will deliver to them more value. And this is the trend that I'm seeing in the current in a few years, in a short future, I would say.
It reminds me that we already have a hangout about soft skills, so it's good to hear about communication again. And I do agree with you both about the need to talk with VPs and directors and etc. But when we are nearer the technical stuff, I do see another advantage to have a good English. That is one that Anna pointed out. We are much nearer the new knowledge, the new papers, the new magazines, the new blog posts, etc., the new conference that appears all around the world. If we know how to speak, how to read, how to listen English, and this link with the source of knowledge of community is only because the English language is understood and globally accepted as this default language for knowledge, business, etc. Anna, something else to say about this?
Well, I think another interesting point is that it helps solve problems. Yeah, so if you have a problem, you're trying to do something and you can't do it, it's much easier to find people, to find blogs, to find technical information that can help you in English. Yeah. So this is something that I see a lot with my coworkers. Yeah, they search for this info and sometimes they don't understand completely. Yeah, and they come and ask me if the solution that they found is okay for their problem.
In this point, I would add and remember that the programming languages are in English, and most of the companies that we buy stuff like language and databases and all those stuffs are from North America. And if you want to read their manual or their stuff, it's usually in English. But in the other side, the sad thing is that as we get the technology and the things evolving, if people in Brazil don't have to speak English as we had in the past, for example, all games that are coming to the market nowadays are coming in Portuguese. You, even the speaking of the game is in Portuguese, and in the movie theaters, the movies are it's being hard, at least in my city, to find movies in English. All of them
Oh,
are coming in Portuguese, and
really?
and also the Google Translator and all this stuff. There the that kind of thing they are developed for Skype that would translate the speak in real time, and all this stuff is making people don't have any need of having to learn English, because if they want to read, they can just click a button and translate the entire web page, or even for speaking. So I think we have both sides of the coins about the technology and the English.
Yeah, it's weird that as technology advances and allow us to speak with each other without having to have a common language among us, it kind of uh, tears apart. We don't have to learn those languages. And okay, I understand that it's good for the mankind to have this opportunity to talk with people even when I don't know this language, but I disagree that it's moving the people away from the learning, because even when those technologies are fully developed, which they don't. Google Translator is okay for some things, but it's not the same thing as reading and understanding. And I don't know how much it will be, how much would it affect the learning process, the communication process of learning English, learning German, learning Spanish, and etc. Well, I don't know. My points here.
I would say
Uh,
that if we just look to the Portuguese itself, uh, if you read the comments on and what people post on internet, their Portuguese is becoming poor and poorly every day. Even
yeah,
the
they don't
Portuguese is
even
being
know to
destroyed.
speak Portuguese.
Yeah, even
Yeah,
the Portuguese is
yeah,
being destroyed.
yeah.
Well,
Or
something.
it's improving.
I think
So
in this area that Felipe is talking about, I think it's much, 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 much easier to write test cases in English than in Portuguese. Especially if you are writing test cases for automation on the given when then procedure. It's much easier to write. In Portuguese, you have to write. Uh, you start with this scene and you click it to navigate to the words not come so easy because we are used to talk in English on this area. And
we are
in English,
used to read
there
English.
in English there are words that define a whole phrase for Portuguese.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Returning to the point of Google Translator, one thing that we have to be really careful. Yeah, because it gives the false sensation that we can know English. using translators. Yeah, and a machine will never understand completely a language, so it can be translated perfectly. Yeah, so nowadays we see some texts that uh, we get very that are getting very very bad because people don't try to translate, yeah, to really use the language and simply use a Google translator. Yeah, nowadays even abstracts, sometimes we read abstracts, yeah, that were translated using Google translator and you don't understand the thing. Yeah, so we have to be careful with that. Yeah, uh, it helps, of course, it can be helpful. Yeah, but we cannot take everything literally. Yeah, as it's the solution. Yeah, so it's important to learn. I spend all my life learning. Yeah, so I read a lot, I listen a lot to podcasts, to videos, and all the time I find a word that I don't know. Yeah, and I have to search for it. Yeah, and sometimes when we use Google Translator or other translators that are better than Google Translator, yes, there are translators that are better. Uh, we can't find a good translation for that. Yeah, so if you have the English skills, you can use an English to English dictionary so you can understand better what that word means. Yeah, so just a little tip for everybody.
I agree, and especially because people are trying to literally translate. I mean, I think the biggest problem is that when people are thinking in Portuguese and trying to write or speak in English, that's the biggest issue that usually we find is that, I mean, of course, Brazilians will understand, but that kind of stuff like, "Tea with me, I book your face," it doesn't make sense for anybody in English to understand that, but for us, we are trying to say, "Deixa comigo, livro sua cara." But of course, this
Yeah,
has nothing
it's
to do
fun,
with what we were trying to say. But people are trying to literally translate the conversation, and sometimes it does not work. But another thing that we have to consider is that not sure who had said that, but I think that it was Roberto when he was mentioning about the accents. And sometimes when you are talking with an American, you may feel and you may see many difference from a person from England, for example. That kind of stuff, instead of a bottle of water, you are talking about a bottle of water and stuff like that. This is easy to understand, but there are many other stuff. For example, the Scottish accent is harder than harder I would not say, but it's stronger than the British one, I think. And you have, of course, when you are there and you are living with those guys, you'll be more familiar with their way to speak. But this is another challenge for a person who is not a native speaker in terms of English. You have to deal with different kinds of accents. Indians have a different accent than British guys, than the Irish guys, and then the Scottish guys. There are many different accents on that, and you have to sometimes in a big company when you have to work with distributed teams. You may have the situation where you are in a room or in a meeting where many different accents are speaking up by that time, and you have to have the ability to understand every single one and speak to each one of those guys. So this is one interesting challenge that I think that is part of this business.
one matter that you mentioned, it's about the phrase structure. Yeah, the way of putting ideas together in English, it's kind of similar to Portuguese, but it's not the same. You have, despite all the cultural difference, you have to think like an American or an English folk or a Scotland folk or anything like that. You can't say like a Brazilian would just to sound sympathetic. You have to be more direct. You have to be polite, but direct, but short. And this way of structuring your idea and exposing your idea, it's one of the hardest thing I had to learn in English, and I think it's one of the hardest thing you have to know about a given language or a given uh, custom, given culture. How to properly communicate with them, not using the words, but structuring the idea in a way that it will sound more like what they will think. And it's kind of hard to explain either. And Roberto is kind of uh, not talking, and I don't like people who don't talk, as I don't like people who don't make questions. So please make questions, and let's hear about Roberto.
I'm
What do you think
available.
is the
I'm
what do
available
you think,
here. I'm the one that most talking until now.
what do you think is the most difficult um, lesson you have to learn about the English usage? I mean, for me, it's the English idea is structure. I have to learn how to think like an English person, to write better emails, to talk better. And what do you think?
People used to say that the British native English was the best way to learn because it was the classical way, and then you should learn the predicatives, the adjectives, and the English way to how do I say improve the English, not say you are something. You just to say you are as a whole phrase as it was only one word. But as I think the best way is to learn the talking English is to search for a chat or these schools that we have today with self-study learning and ways to learn beyond the internet. I forgot the names right now, but I have a friend that's improving a lot his English through the internet. And these days we can learn almost everything through the YouTube. I saw some courses that they say a word and you repeat, they say and you repeat that kind of learning, and you can improve the your speaking and your vocabulary. I think it all depends on you. On this IT area, we usually start on the technical English, but we also may start with the speaking. On the university, we only have the technical study. We don't talk much, and we don't have much learning about our speaking. The best way is always doing it, is speaking and try to search for international chats and to try to search for a way to make an interchange, to visit the other countries and improve yourself.
Roberto touched on an interesting point that we'd like to discuss about. It's about what tools do you guys use it to improve your English by yourself? For myself, I can say that when I started making interviews for my first international projects, one of the sites I visit at most was the livemocha.com. I don't know if you guys heard about it. And another one is very interesting. It's voaspecialenglish.com. It's a website made by North American to foreign people that wants to learn the American English. So you have the texts, then you and they make a news for you, and they talk paused so you can understand and read the text and itself. Oh, what do you would you say about that, Anna?
Uh, well, there are many ways nowadays to learn a language. For example, I can say I'm trying to study German, yeah, and I studied 1 year, yeah, at university, and now I'm studying using the internet, yeah. So I think that it's important to learn any language that you have some basis to begin, yeah. So I think 1 year, 2 years of an English course can be useful for you to understand the structure, to understand how the thoughts are formed, yeah, just as was said. And then nowadays we have many ways of practicing, yeah. But what is important is uh, that you that you understand why, and how are you going to use your English? Yeah. If you want simply to read technical stuff, okay, read a lot and use a dictionary and so on. But if you need to really to talk to people, you need to listen a lot and you need to talk. And the most difficulty that people have are in these two skills. Listening, okay, people can listen a lot using the internet, but talking, people generally don't have this opportunity, yes? So it's a good idea that you make friends and talk by Skype and by other technologies, and try some forms of be in contact with people that you need to talk in English, and to start forcing yourself to think in English. That's the biggest problem. Many of the students that I get are adults, generally traumatized by school. As you guys said, I think it was you, Felipe, that said that during school you only learned the verb to be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so people generally are traumatized, and one of the things that I have to do is to try to remove the trauma from my students, yeah, and to try to make them talk, and to try to make them stop thinking in English, yeah. So a tip that I give everybody is that when you have kids, please make your kids start learning English young, yeah, not as a teenager, but younger, as a pre-teenager, as a child, yeah. Pedagogically talking, a child before 7 can learn much more easier any language, yeah, because they can understand better, recognize better all the sounds. This is for any language, yeah. So it's important that.
Trying to bring the conversation back to IT, one question that was mentioned was if reading is a more important skill than listening for Brazilian testers. Who's the next? I think Sauner or maybe Anna can continue and answer that.
Well, I think that for testing, yeah, if you don't have to deal with foreign people, yeah, it's much more important that you can read and understand, yeah. What we talked about, all the technical information, the manuals and so on, yeah, that they are all in English, yeah. So if you can read, is the first step. It will already help a lot, yeah. But if you have to deal with people, you have to improve your skills in listening and writing. Yeah.
I agree with that. And a good start, just uh, picking up some of the previous question that we were discussing here, I would like to add my 50 cents on that. One good way that you can train and you can maybe practicing a little bit your listening is watching some of those animations like Shrek, Cars, all those stuff from Toy Story, this kind of stuff. Why? Because they are made
It's
for the
unforgivable.
children.
I
They are
have
made.
improved a lot of my English watching for friends. The talking is very useful, very how can I say, prospective and very easy to learn. Yeah,
Exactly,
I used to listen a lot of their talking and repeat what they were saying and check the subtitle for the translation, and it helped me a lot on the vocabulary and to improve my English. That's a
exactly.
great that's a great example how to improve your English daily and a very easy way. Listen to music and all this kind of stuff always help to improve our English.
Exactly, because animation movies are made for for children, and they used to have a simple language and direct language, and they try to speak slowly. Most part of the dialogues are understandable because they used to speak slowly for children to understand them. So whenever you have the opportunity of watching one of those kind of movies and maybe turning off the subtitles or something like that, it's a good idea for practicing because of course you be acquiring more knowledge on that, and when you need to listen to something to some other dialogues where people are talking faster and faster, you'll be already prepared for that, and this would be a good start. I think this kind of stuff helps a lot. Music also helps a lot, but for a person which is a beginner on English and it's trying to understand the vocabulary, trying to improve their listening. For these kind of people, I think that animation movies would be a great idea to start. To start by trying to understand a very complex movie, it will not help. But if you start from an animation one, it will help you on giving a better idea about how the structure of the language works, how the dialogues takes place, and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, just to
And
complete what you guys said, uh, it's important that we practice, that we improve any language, doing stuff that we love. Yeah, so most of you guys started learning English because of games. Yeah, many of the students I've got started learning English because they liked music. Yeah, and they started wanting to understand what their favorite singers were singing. Yeah, so what is the best idea? The best idea is to focus on what you love. If you love to watch sitcoms, watch a lot of sitcoms. If you like animation movies, watch the animation movies. If you like to read about gardening or whatever, yeah, uh, subscribe on YouTube channels talking about that. Yeah. So the best way to learn a language is loving. Yeah. So that's my 10 cents for you all.
Good sense.
Yeah, I just would like to point something else regarding this. When you guys were saying that it's important to practice, I think it's important. There are some bars in some cities, like in Porto Alegre, we have a bar where people used to go there to talk in English, for example. But
we
the biggest thing is that you should not be afraid to expose yourself to the language. You should not be afraid to make mistakes. If you are not doing that professionally right now, do not be afraid. You have the opportunity for making mistakes when you are not talking professionally on that. If you are dealing with your customer or something like that, you should be very careful. You have to pursue the perfection, right? But when
Oh,
you are learning, you should. I think that the guys which are not afraid of exposing themselves to the mistakes, they will be they will be succeed on that. I think this is my opinion. You should have encourage people to talk and to expose themselves to do that. I remember the first time when the first time I said no. Now I know that I'm speaking English correctly. Was long time ago when I had to call HP support for resolving a problem in my printer, and nobody around me by the time speaks English. So I look imagine you look around you and nobody speaks English. So what you can do?
he speaks English.
That's the time to prove that you can do that. So I called the HP support by the time, and I was talking to them. And when I made the link that I was understanding what the guy on the other side was telling me, and the guy on the other side was understanding me, that was kind of magic, right? Now I speak English, and I mean later,
That's awesome.
exactly, that you broke the barrier that
Remove the barrier. Yeah.
and I
Yeah,
mean,
it's some.
when you are
Sorry.
traveling abroad, for example, you have the opportunity to live for 1 or 2 months in another country, and you can do everything by yourself alone, not having help from anybody. This is something that it's also magic because, for example, when I travel, you have let's suppose you are in the United States, nobody speaks Portuguese there. You have to just speak 100% of your time speaking English, and you have to eat, you have to buy things, you have to rent a car, you have to visit some stuff, some places, ask for some information, and you have to do that in English. And when you go for the first time and you notice that you are able to do that, man, that's amazing for the first time. You are totally far from your home, and you can do everything as you were in your city, as you were speaking in your language. This is something that is much valuable on that. But you only get that if you expose yourself and try to talk to people.
It's a funny barrier that a language barrier because we are not afraid of speaking Portuguese wrong. We just do it. So fuck off if I don't know that ditongo. I will just say that word and oh, you understand me. We are
The,
friends and
the, the,
etc.
funk, the funk singers are there to prove what you are saying.
Exactly. So what the hell we are ashamed to talk in English with an English folk who obviously is trying to understand you, who kind of wants your help or wants to help you because people want to help each other. It's kind of a natural law. So why do we have this blockade, this barrier? It's kind of exposing yourself. I totally agree with Eduardo in that people are kind of afraid to exposing themselves to be silly because I don't know how to speak correctly. Nobody does, not even they. So
You know, uh, someday I asked it to a client in the United States if he thought that our level of English was a problem for our business. And the interesting was the answer that he gave me. He just said me, "Your English is better than my Portuguese. You guys are awesome. You do a good job. We can understand you. You can understand us.
Yeah,
There is no problem."
this is something people sometimes do not pay attention. Americans or British guys, when you are talking to them in English, they respect a lot this kind of stuff. They respect the fact that you are talking to them in their language because they are not able to do the same with you. So usually there is a big respect from these guys when you are talking to them uh, in their language, for example, because they know how hard it is, and sometimes they know that they do not have this ability. So this is something, and this is particularly, I would say that this is something that Brazilians have inside them, I would say, because we do not have some barriers on our tongues when we are talking. We can learn basically any kind of language without a strong a wrong accent, for example. Of course, we have some kind of accent. People know that we are not Americans or natives or something like that if you're talking to them. But because of the way we used to structure our language and our phonetic specifically, it makes easier for Brazilians to talk any kind of language, in this case English, for example, because we do not have some physical barriers when you are talking about phonetics.
Yeah, Brazilians are very friendly about learning foreign language. If you think about the guys in other countries, if you are traveling to the other country, there is no people speaking your language. For example, here in Brazil, when they come to Brazil, we have people in Brazil that speak in English to speak with them. But if you go to France, you have to speak in French. If you go to Spain, you have to speak Spanish because they want to have one guy speaking Portuguese in there to speak with you. So Brazilians at this point are much more flexible and interested in learning.
And they like a lot of that. Besides it, about talking about the opportunities we have on our company to improve our English, I just want to say that it's a nice catch. I had it on a company I used to work, the English Day. We set an English Day usually at Friday because it's the day more flexible, more comfortable, and we set an English day to talk only in English, and we used to go lunch in English and run our daily activities only in English, so we could improve it. And talking about the shame of the people to talk and to try to talk, uh, everybody used to say, "Oh, it's easy for you because you know how to speak. I don't know, so it's harder for me." But I didn't born knowing. I had to learn. I had to improve. I had to study. I had to watch the movies, as I said before, to learn my English. So you have the opportunity now to improve yours. You can take it or you can leave it. It's a choose you have.
I have an
Play,
image in my desk that reads, "Keep calm and speaks English."
playing the devil on that idea of having a day or having a meeting, a weekly meeting just to speak in English. I never saw it lasting too long. I don't know why, because people own workplace seems to feel that they are being watched, they are being measured if they're talking in English, maybe. What we kind of do on my workplace is to invent words. We have some weird words that doesn't make sense in English, like with me, and like agated, like merge problems became the meta problems, and we kind of make jokes with that, and we kind of realize that it makes people more open to try to talk in English with those weird words, because they're Portuguese words translated to English that doesn't make any fucking sense in no other language.
We do that too. It's very funny, like saying, "Oh, forget."
Yeah,
You get it.
I'm not sure about you guys, but we there at Equar, at least myself, I can speak by myself. Uh, Along the last 2 or 3 years, I have made many interviews, and it's unbelievable some of those situations that you get when you are interviewing people. I think that I made more than 200 interviews along the last 3 years. And there are some, as you said, people are inventing some words. I don't remember one on the top of my mind right now, but they used to do that. When you are describing, you ask them to describe something, they are blah 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 blah, and they uh, translate something literally or something like that, or invent a word in English that it's similar to Portuguese, but in fact, actually, it does not exist in the real life. And but another thing is when you are asking someone for something or any question from their experiences, and you've got that kind of answer like us. uh, uh, oh, come on. If you're applying for a job where you are supposed to speak in English all the time and having many kind of meetings, sometimes 3 or 4 meetings a day, you should not speak with the customer. Or this is nothing to do with the pronunciation. Pronunciation is another problem, but you can be understood by the customer. But the problem is when you freeze, right? You are and nothing comes outside of your mouth, and you cannot do what needs to be done. So this is a biggest problem that we face when you are interviewing candidates for the open positions you have, because they mostly, I mean, I used to say something very, very interesting. If a candidate puts on him or her resume saying that my English level is that one, you can be sure that is at least one level below that. I mean, if you are saying that you are advanced, probably when you are coming from the interview, the guy would be an intermediate. Or if they said that they are intermediate, they would be a basic one or something like that. Because I mean, not sure if you are asking or if our requirements are too hard for them in terms of English. But what I have seen in the last 2 or 3 years is that people are not prepared, not only in terms of English. Of course, they are not prepared for the interviews as well, but they sometimes freeze when they have to talk. And I mean, we cannot. Sometimes the guys are very good technically, but we eliminate the candidates because of their English, because they are not able to even keep 5 minutes of conversation with a customer or something like that. So this is another problem that we face.
And it leads us to the last question of the night. What is it better? A junior tester that only knows how to perform manual tester only and speaks English kind of like us, man. Or a senior tester that has years of experience, has had opportunities to manage people and to create test plans or to create some automation framework or etc. But doesn't know English very well. He just, what is it better? What would you pick up?
I think,
Go on.
As Philip said before, that almost all companies, at least they think that the testing area, the programming for automation or performance test or the tools that the daily need to use or the methodologies, everything can be learned. But if you doesn't know English yet, it will be much harder to understand and practice your English for now. Uh, Especially if the guy is junior, he must be already 20, at least 20 years old in media. So if the guy doesn't know English until 20 years old, he probably not know until that. I have two kids with 10 years old and 4 years old. If I say any English word for them, they are like sponges. they learn by the same time. Every day they have English courses, English classes on the school, and they come home talking English, and I discuss with them the project, the daily projects, and they absorb almost everything. But a 20 years old guy doesn't act like that. It's much harder to learn and to improve. But the testing area, the practical area, since they will act every day with that, it's almost every company thinks that it's much easier to teach them, especially because they will need to teach something anyway. So if you need to teach something or
Uh,
teach all,
we are losing you. You are
sorry.
so summarizing. The junior one, just to be clear here, you vote for the junior who knows English or the senior who doesn't.
Yeah. I think almost all companies think that it's much easier to the junior to improve the knowledge on testing than the English speaking.
Nice. Felipe?
I would say that it depends if the company would have a project that requires English or not. Because one of the mistakes I see in some companies is when they have projects from only from Brazilian clients, they won't need to speak in English, and they require the English speaking level for hiring them. But in my case, for example, in my team, if someone that's listening the Hangout and would like to work in my project, if you don't speak in English, you are not able to work at in my team, even if you have even if you are Bill Gates, if you can't speak English, because we have to talk directly to clients all the moments, and we need to speak, not only type, not only reading. So to start the job, the guy would need to speak English and to read it. So it's not what would be best, is which one is able to do the job.
Anna?
Well, I agree with Felipe that it will depend on the company. Yeah. For example, in my case, that I work for the government, it doesn't make so much difference if the person knows English or not. Yeah. But I think that for most of the testers that are not working for the government, they're working for private companies. Yeah, I think it's important to know English, because as Roberto said, uh, the company will have to teach how you work there anyway. Yes, and if you know English, it will be easier for them to teach you. Yeah, so it will depend on the kind of company.
Sauner?
Well, I agree. It may depends on the purpose of the position. Of course, you will not give a very high responsibility position for a junior guy. It doesn't matter if he or she speaks English or not. But if you are talking about the same situation, a person in the same technical abilities which speaks English, or it would be better than the one that who doesn't. So I think that I think most part of us, everybody here agrees with that, because English, a new language takes much more time to build. The learning curve is longer for learning a new language than, for example, learning something technical stuff. And this would be the best approach, in my opinion. I think I would, if you allow me, Gabriel, I would like to ask one more question to everybody. So this is something just for having some kind of fun here. What do you remember the biggest mistake you had talking English? Doesn't matter professionally or in your personal life. Can you share this with everybody here?
I think we can end with this one, and everyone can just say goodbye and say his worst mistake. What do you guys think?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? So I'll just keep going with the junior versus senior one. And I'm going to back with Sauner to not allow him to stay on top of the line and just vote a junior with English or a senior with bad English. Sauner.
A junior with English.
Nice. Okay. My opinion is kind of harsh. I'm sorry, but it's opinion. Everyone has one, and I don't think um, person with no knowledge of English would be suitable for IT due to the ability of problem solving that knowing the language brings. You, like we said on the talk before, we have a lot of resources that are not translated. We have papers, conference, etc. We have people who doesn't speak Portuguese because, oh my God, Portuguese is just a little bit of the word. So come on, guys. And due to that fact, to that ability of um, making your life easier, making you a person who can learn much more, I would prefer always the people who speaks English despite the fact that he or she is technically problematic or something. But that's my opinion. You can all disagree, and we kind of lose many spectators because of that. But I don't know. Anyway, it's my opinion. And we can say our goodbyes, I think, and also say our worst mistake in English. Who wants to start? I don't. Anna has the microphone not on
Ladies
mute.
first. Ladies first. Anna, please.
Go on.
Okay. Well, so
Goodbye and worst mistake.
okay. Well, I was here trying to remember a bad mistake talking about working with IT, but I couldn't remember now. So I'll talk about a mistake as a teacher. Yes. One time I was having lunch with another teacher that she's an old lady and one of her parents is American and the other is British. So she's a native speaker. Yeah. Although she was born, I think she was born in Brazil, I'm not sure, but she's a native speaker because of her parents. Yeah. And we were having lunch and talking in English. Yeah, and one of these events that people go just to talk in English. And thinking a little in Portuguese, I said London. And she corrected my pronunciation at the same time. Yeah, and she said, no, it's not London, it's London. Yeah, and then I stopped and thought, and then I said, well, technically thinking as a teacher, I stopped and thought, yeah, there are two schwas, and we're so accustomed to say that to say that word in Portuguese wrongly that I didn't think that I was talking in English to say that. So this is one mistake I will never forget, and in 2 weeks I will be in London. So this is one mistake I'll never forget, and I have to remember this a lot when I'm there, that I have to pronounce the name of the city correctly. So that's it, guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Sounded, you were not on the mute. Go on.
Okay. First of all, thank you all for this opportunity. It's very, very nice and pleasant to talk to you guys again. And in English is something special. I think that we can do this more times. I think it would be a great idea to have a second round of this hangout. It would be very nice. I would appreciate that. I think that one mistake, I had a mistake, but it was not a, a, a real mistake by that time because I was able to avoid that on time. But let me tell you, this is something I used to talk to my team because it's kind of funny. A long time ago, I was talking to send an email to a customer, and I used to, depending on the person which is on the other side, if I know him or her, I used to say regards by the end of the email, right? I mean, blah blah blah, blah regards, Eduardo. And by that time, I was in a thread with more people, not only one guy or one girl. It was a certain sort of people there, and I was typing very fast. Instead of regards, I wrote retards, and I click on send the email, and by the time, but the but the biggest thing, the greatest thing on that is that I was using the Google email, Gmail, and there was a feature, and I for lucky I was having that feature enabled, which is allows you to undo the action before sending the email. So I click on send, but I said I read then, oh my god, and I click on redo that. So the email was not actually sent, but it was very funny because I mean it probably would cause me a lot of problems. But I mean it was totally not intentional. I was just typing very fast, and since the T was close to the G in the keyboard, I switched it to the other to the other letter uh, by mistake. But fortunately, the people there didn't receive the email with the regards instead of the regards. But this is something that after that I started taking much care of that because I mean even if it's not intentional, people over there will not notice that it is a typo or not. They may not even read that the regards there, but if they read it would not be a good stuff to for them. But I mean this is many years ago when I was starting working with international projects. But fortunately, that feature from the Gmail has saved my life or in my job by that time, I think.
It would be an epic troll email, like, thanks, retards. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean the conversation was very nice. It was nothing. We are not arguing or something on the email because if we are arguing on the email, probably they will not they will not like that kind of stuff. I mean,
anyway,
but this is
bro,
my story.
who wants to be next? Felipe, Roberto?
I can
Raise
go
your
on.
hand.
Okay,
Go,
so
go you, Felipe.
okay, thank you. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you guys for being here, talking to you. It's nice to talk with everybody from the testing community from Brazil. You guys are very helpful on answering threads in by email. So you- I know that this is a good community we have in Brazil. Yay! And well, talking about mistakes, I remember that one day in one stand up, uh, that was not one mistake from myself because I couldn't remember one. But that's funny, so I would like to share it. It was a stand-up meeting, and the guy would like to say what he would do. So he just said, "I pretended to work on user story 1, 2, 3, 4," and I guess that's not a good to say to the client that you pretend to work, right? He would like to say intend, but it was said pretend. That was really funny.
This is a very common mistake.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
false cognates are the biggest problems when we learn a language. So it's very common mistake.
Yeah,
And
Uh,
go on, Roberto.
my example was actually more about Indian culture than English itself. I was talking to this guy. His name is Mama Prajif Bruva. I sent you his name written in English in India, and I thought that it was a girl because everybody was talking about she, and I started to talking here as a old lady, and she needs to do it, and I changed multiple emails with him, and then we had a meeting with more than 2 hours, and after all that talking, he said, "Oh, just for you to know, I am a man." After this long conversation, he said that he was a man. I just excused him and said that you should have talked that on the first moment of our talking. uh, uh, Besides that, talking about this opportunity here, it was very good for me and to know about you guys. And I hope you can make it better and often as soon as possible. Thank you very much and bye bye for you all.
Nice. And just to answer the last question, Anna, what is the localization job you mentioned you did? What's the localization? Is it translation or is it the fact that, I don't know, localized a keyword to many languages?
Uh, Let me try to explain a way that everybody will get it. For example, a company has a website. The original website is in English, yeah, and they want to have multiple versions of that site in Spanish and Portuguese and so on, yeah. So localization is to make this translation of the website, yeah, to the other language, to make this other version of the website. And the problem is that in Portuguese, the translation is very bad, is localização, and people don't understand what is localização. I'm going to do the localização of the website. It doesn't make sense for most of the people, yeah, but people that work with translations, they understand this term, yeah, and it sounds strange. It seems that is an invented term, yeah, localization. It seems that somebody in Portuguese invented the term, but the English term is localization, and the translation localização is terrible, terrible.
Thanks for the quick explanation about this, and thank you all for being here. I don't kind of remember any bad mistake I have made. It may be a bad thing to not remember bad mistakes, but anyway, I kind of learned two stuff that helped me. One is about the difference between guy and folks. Guy is a term to be used when you are writing an email to someone that is to some people that are only male, they are only uh, guys, you know. You don't call a girl guy. Hi guy doesn't sound good. The women on America doesn't like to be called guys. So don't do it. When you're writing something that you may have to forward to some American women, please use folks. And another one is bad the bad issue we have in Portuguese with the letter L. We kind of don't pronunciate the L stuff of the words. We have Brazil, but we don't speak Brazil. We speak Brazil, and that mistake when you when you bring that mistake to your English talking, it kind of confuses everyone. So those are my words, thoughts, my words. teachings or etc. The worst thing that I have learned about English, those are the ones. Said that, thank you all, folks. Thank you all for those an hour and a half talking in English. I know it's tiring somehow to talk in English all day, talk in English at night, and say do hangouts in English. I'm with Summer in the hope that we may have more hangouts in English, maybe with more folks, because I don't think we had many spectators on this one. I hope we can reach more folks on YouTube. So please, if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment or something, and I will know. I will be happier seeing that you comment and you saw it. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Sauner. Thank you, Felipe. And thank you, Roberto, for the last call. I just called you on the last minute and you just arrived. And it was really nice to talk with you guys. Bye bye. Good night. See
Bye.
you
Bye.
around.
Okay.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Alize.